Hey, project-based, welcome to the next video in the SQLite series. In this video, we're going to be talking about updating this Dota comp tracker database, SQLite database. And first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and knock off a couple of my requirements. So I finished the main menu and the create function. As well as creating the basic database in the last set of videos, the last couple of videos there. And now I'm going to move on to doing an update. Now, what does it mean to update a record? Well, I'm going to have some existing records in this database, and I want to be able to update that data if something changes. Typically, this is one of the more difficult sort of functions of a database to do correctly. It's also kind of risky in the sense that updates or deletes, for example, can radically change the data. If you're not careful, they can change it in unexpected ways. They can open you up to security vulnerabilities as well, which we'll kind of discuss a little bit. And anyway, this video, or actually I'll say this, the video won't be that long because I'll fast forward a bunch, but it took me about 30 minutes to work this out, and that was after reading documentation and skimming over lots of documentation, because this was totally new territory for me. So yeah, you'll see some of that as we work through the video. First thing I'm going to do here, though, is I'm going to get like the base function defined, which is going to share some similarities with the create player record because I still need inputs and prompts for someone to, do the update. One thing I'll say is that the way I'm doing this is actually very basic, and it's not ideal in the sense that I'm gonna when I want someone to be, or when someone wants to update a record, they actually have to update the whole record in a way that nothing gets like saved about the existing record. So it's like, oh, you just want to change the second hero. Well, I haven't done that in this. I guess I could go back and do it, but right now I'm not doing that sort of, it's not really that fancy. It's just something we see every day, but to actually code it, it's going to take a little more time. So I'm sticking with just this basic version where, I start out with the idea that I could update like just name or hero or something like that, but I changed my mind and I decide that that's just going to take too long for right now, and I go ahead and do it the most basic way. That way you can kind of see the evolution as well. One thing I'm doing is I'm always going back and adding the basic method to my main file. That way I can at least make sure I can call it, and I prepare it to take arguments or whatever is necessary. Here I make a note that I probably want to have some way of displaying records, and so it would be good if every sub-function like update, create, delete had access to that display function. That way it makes it much easier to just show what someone's about to update, delete, or what they've created, etc. So this display function is going to end up being included in basically every other function in the database program once I've got it written. So I'm just making myself a little to-do. You might notice that it has sort of a special highlighting in PyCharm. If you in PyCharm or in VS Code or any good IDE, if you do hashtag to-do in Python or a lot of languages, you're going to get like a special little note. And these notes will actually show up in your development environment as things for you to do. So it's almost like a little checklist. And I think a lot of professional developers would use that regularly. I don't know. It seems like something that would be practiced a lot to keep track of stuff, but who knows? I'm not really sure on that. So I kind of take a look at create player record. I'm trying to get an idea of how exactly I should go about doing this update. So I do start to do some Google research here. And I'm going to start with the documentation from the SQLite organization website. What I'm looking at here is like how an update actually works and what are the options that can be provided with an update. So I know this looks a little wonky because it's all this sort of circuit-based or flow-based charting, but it's actually pretty easy to understand once you just take a second and look at it. Now, some of these words are things that I'm familiar with. For example, like the where statement in SQL is a lot like logic. It means, for example, we could say update all rows where the hero or the hero in position 1 is Juggernaut. So it kind of provides us with this logic that's pretty common, or this where clause, I think I said statement. The full thing is the statement, like the update, the delete, the create, that's a statement, and then we add clauses to that statement to change its behavior. And so some of these words I know, some of them I don't know. All these things about joins and stuff, we're not worried about that right now. That's where things get really wild and difficult, in my opinion. But that's what I'm doing, is I'm looking through this documentation, trying to see what I need to know in order to proceed with what I'm doing. I end up looking at a few different places. I find some different articles. This one seemed to have some good info to it, but it wasn't exactly what I was looking for. However, it does bring up one really cool thing, which is this idea that you might be tempted to use Python string formatting or string operations to include values in database queries. And it says, do not do this. And the reason that you don't do this, it is highly insecure. In fact, if we go and take a look at this famous XKCD comment, you'll see why. We can easily pass unsecure, or we can easily pass SQL statements through unsecure fields on, for example, a website or in some other form. If that form gets saved to a database and that SQL statement gets executed on the database, it can have some very severe consequences. So this is the famous one from XKCD, where the parents like name their kid drop tables, and the parents like, oh, we named him Little Bobby Tables, and you should learn to secure your database. It's pretty funny. It's a good example of something that's, it's happened. Not that particular example probably, but it has happened where people don't sanitize their database inputs. They don't use the correct methodology to create database statements or SQL statements, and so things like that happen. That is a regular occurrence. Like, that stuff does happen all the time because of lazy programming or just ignorance. Okay, so at this point, I decide that I'm going to have to I want to, and I have to because I just don't know, I'm going to have to re-enter all the information to do an update. And so that looks really similar to my create, but I don't want to like reuse the create method here or the create function here. I just want to have a standalone function that is update. Okay, so again, you can see where I'm using this same syntax to connect to my database. I'm creating the cursor, but this time when I write my execute method out, it's going to include this update statement. And I got to go back and forth a lot here to get the syntax, okay? This is totally new territory for me. I've never written this before. I'm going to be going back and forth to the syntax. I'll run it several times, try to get it right. It takes me a while. Like, this takes me quite a bit of time. I also discovered that PyCharm has this cool built-in functionality where you can like select what kind of SQL you're writing, and it will sort of help you out writing that SQL. I don't understand the full use of it yet, but it is there, which is cool. It's a very handy feature. Okay. So after a while, I end up deciding on a syntax that looks like a dictionary kind of, where we prescribe the values that we want to set with the update using this sort of named syntax, which you're going to see. And I think this is very straightforward. So basically, I'm providing a name that's associated with what it is I'm updating, and those names like hero, let's see what it ends up being here. So basically what we do is we identify the fields we're going to be updating, and then we pass our execute method those fields with the SQL statement, but also we provide a dictionary which is correlated to what we want those values to be. So you can see like where I've got set position is going to be pause. Well, that is correlated to a key in this dictionary, which goes back to PL pause, which is the variable that's holding my input, basically. Same thing here for hero 1. That's going to be associated back to that hero 1 input. And after I write this, it's a very long method call. You can see like it's got multiple layers. I'm trying to figure out how to format it so I can read it all. This ends up working pretty well, and after some syntax errors and just dealing with little random problems, I end up successfully updating the database. That's the end of the update video. If you're curious, if you've got questions about this process, if you're out there building your own SQLite database right this moment and you want to get some more information, I encourage you to Google. And if you get stuck on Google, just ask me and I'll try to help you out. Even though I'm fairly ignorant on this stuff, I'll happily help you because I want you to be successful. All right, I'll see you next time for the delete video or the display. I can't remember which one is next. We'll see.